I am Freddie Parker. I'm a member of the Department of History here at NCCU. I am the GSL Chambers Distinguished Professor of History. I began teaching here in 1976, so it's almost 40 years. So over the span of 40 years, I've seen tremendous change. When I first began teaching, we had about 3,500 students, and now we have approximately 8,000 students. I've seen tremendous interest in history back in the 70s, 80s, 90s. That interest has not waned over about a 40-year period, even though students have changed dramatically over the past 40 years. I don't think this desire to learn history has really changed. Back 30 years ago, 20 years ago, if you had to go out and read an article or a book, you had to physically get up and go get it. If you had to go to the library to read something, you had to get up. Now everything is at our fingertips. We can lie in bed. We can essentially be anywhere across the country and take a class. So I've seen that tremendous change in our technology over the last 40 years, and that makes for a different kind of student. Back when I was an undergraduate student, I was always told, for the most part, that blacks did not resist slavery. And you can imagine 40 years ago, we don't have the number of books and articles and symposia that we have today. And so there was very little on slave resistance in North Carolina. I wrote a master's thesis entitled "A Slave Protest in North Carolina," where I looked at various forms of protest among slaves. And one form was running away. And I decided that I would take a look at running away among slaves as a means of resistance. Began doing the research and went into the research believing that I'd probably find a few hundred runaway slave advertisements. These were advertisements placed in the newspapers when slaves fled, if the owner could afford to place that advertisement in the newspaper. And after searching for many years, I came out with about 2,200 advertisements for about 3,000 slaves. And this was between 1775 and 1840. The significance, of course, is that nobody had done that kind of research. So I saw myself adding to what we call the historiography, or the writings and the interpretation of history. And of course, nobody had done that for North Carolina. So I wrote the dissertation. The dissertation was published. And then what I did was to actually compile those 3,000 advertisements for runaway slaves. Nobody had done that. So the significance, of course, is that research that I did over several years is out there for the public to actually read and to firsthand take a look at those advertisements for runaway slaves. I was introduced to Dr. Franklin through his writings. First, the book From Slavery to Freedom, which of course is the long-standing textbook on African-American slavery, from slavery to freedom. And I read The Militant South, that was published by Dr. Franklin, and The Free Negro in North Carolina. So I was actually introduced to him through his writings. I met him first in 1974 in Philadelphia at a conference, and from that point on I would actually talk with him when I would see him at conferences. And for my second book, I got the courage and the nerve up to ask him if he would actually write the foreword to the book. And he asked me to send him some information about what I was doing, and I did that. I also gave him an autographed copy of my first book, and he liked what he saw, I guess, because he agreed to write the foreword to the book. What I take from Dr. Franklin is the fact that he was a persistent and first-rate, meticulous, careful researcher. And what I try to pass on to students is the fact that the most important aspect of production, if you want to write a book, if you want to write an article, the most important aspect of that is the research. If you plan to spend a year on a project, 3/4 of that time should be committed to actually researching, and the other 1/4 of the time to actually writing, because no research, no way to convince people of the past. You have to have the evidence, and you just can't go out and collect the evidence overnight. It takes a long time. So that's what I've learned from Dr. Franklin. I pass it on to my students. I'm so proud to be the Julius L. Chambers Endowed Professor of History. I knew Mr. Chambers. I first met him in 1969 when I was a student in high school, and a group of us had gotten in some trouble. I don't call it trouble. I say that we were marching, demonstrating, picketing without a permit, and we all were arrested. And Mr. Chambers actually served as our attorney, and we were found guilty, but on appeal we won the case. And had some other communications with him over the years, but when he became chancellor of NCCU, I, of course, reintroduced myself to him and worked with him during the time that he was here. So I'm happy to be the endowed professor, Julius L. Chambers Endowed Professor of History. So I handle it in a very with humility. You know, I think that here's a man who has done so much for this nation in the area of civil rights and education, and to have that name, you know, behind my name, or to precede my name, is just humbling for me. Study, study, and study, and then study some more. Research, research, read. We know about the past based on our reading the past, and you have to read the books and the articles, attend conferences, introduce yourself to the archives, learn how to research in the archives. It's all about researching, and then when you have a research base, you can then write and talk about the past.